I teach at a small rural high school in southern Illinois. Now, to give you an idea of just how rural we are, there is a cornfield directly behind us, there's a cornfield directly in front of us, and there's a cornfield directly to our right. Now, directly to our left is the local middle school, but on the other side of that, you guessed it, another cornfield. And my district is very white. It is 92% white, 4% Hispanic, 2% biracial, 1% black, 1% Asian, and 0% Native American or indigenous people. To say that racial diversity in my school is underrepresented is an understatement. 6 years ago, the state of Illinois raised its English credit requirement for graduation from 3 credits to 4 credits, which meant that our school had to increase its offered classes. Specifically, we had to add a senior level elective for seniors who are not already enrolled in the upper level dual credit English classes. The task fell upon me not only to teach, but to create that class. So the first thing I decided to do was to consider the needs of my students. I began by looking at what they were already reading. Freshmen studied Greek and Roman mythology. Sophomores read classic novels and plays. Juniors were studying early American works like Poe and Dickinson. And seniors who weren't enrolled in a college-level English class were left to choose between journalism and British literature. What I did not see in our district's curriculum was what I also didn't see in our student body: diversity. So I decided to make that change, and I started with our books. In my district, I had identified a need, and we need to talk about books. Books for young adults, books for teachers, books for school libraries. I knew that my students needed to become acquainted with characters who are different from them: minority characters, LGBTQ characters, characters with disabilities or mental illnesses. And if my students aren't going to have authentic, organic experiences in their classrooms with diverse groups of people firsthand, then they're going to experience diverse groups of people in their books. And as I began to look for books to use in my curriculum, I discovered that reading diverse books offers numerous benefits to students. First, having books that feature minority characters directly benefits minority students. These books send a positive message that minority students are an important part of our national narrative. According to a study conducted by First Book, a U.S. nonprofit that provides books to children in need, 90% of individuals surveyed indicated that children in their programs would be more enthusiastic readers if they had access to books with characters, stories, and images that reflected their lives and their neighborhoods. When children can really see themselves reflected in a book, we call that a mirror book. And it sends a message that the identities of these children are worthy of representation in our books and our society. But the benefits providing diverse books doesn't stop with diverse readers. It goes further. Reading books that feature diverse characters can actually teach empathy to all students. A study published in 2013 by PH candidate David Comer Kidd and his advisor, Professor Emmanuel Castano, found that reading literature increases a child's theory of mind. What is theory of mind? Well, Psychology Today magazine defines it as the ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, intents, desires, pretending, knowledge, and so on, to oneself and others, and to understand that others have beliefs, desires, and intentions that are different from one's own. At its core, theory of mind is all about empathy, and diverse books foster empathy. Sunili Govianage, a freelance writer for the Washington Post, actually spent a year reading nothing but non-white authors. And then she wrote an op-ed piece where she gave us all of her findings. She wrote about the findings that emerged from her immersion in non-white literature, and one of her fundamental beliefs is that diverse books offer the potential to bridge gaps among the races because diverse books illustrate the common experiences that we all share. They are places to find universal themes that tie all of mankind together, regardless of race. She also writes about the power of multicultural literature to normalize minority characters by having them not merely as vehicles for spotlighting racial issues, but for featuring them as complex, well-developed characters that resonate with readers of all races. So we're not just talking about books that feature slavery and all the minority characters are seen as victims. We're talking about books that have minority characters in prominent roles doing all sorts of things that would appeal to all readers. Now, knowing the potential for diverse books to foster empathy and to highlight common ground, why do we still have problems integrating these books into the curriculum? Well, for starters, there are less books published featuring diverse characters, despite the fact that minority children and adolescents is the fastest growing demographic group in the United States. There is an actual diversity shortage in young adult literature. According to the 2013 First Book Study mentioned previously, only 6% of young adult fiction featuring human characters had diverse main characters. And not only are diverse books less frequently published, but when they are published, they are also more frequently banned. 7 of the 10 most commonly challenged books of 2015 featured characters who weren't considered mainstream, that didn't uphold the status quo. 2 featured gay characters. 2 featured characters who were transgendered. 2 featured minority characters. And 1 featured a character with autism. And the reason that most of these books were banned related directly to the reason that the book was written in the first place. It related directly to the diverse content that was being addressed. The Perks of Being a Wallflower gets banned for homosexual content. The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, which I include in my curriculum, often gets challenged because it uses profanity, including racial slurs, to talk about racism. And I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings is tossed off of school shelves in part because it depicts racism. Of course it depicts racism. It's the autobiography of a black woman growing up in the South during the 40s and 50s. Racism was a big part of her personal narrative. Isn't banning books just because they address the issues of race and sexuality just further enabling willful blindness? By keeping diverse books away from our students, aren't we just making it easier for them to ignore the issues that minorities face every day and to see them as outsiders? Aren't we reinforcing the concept of the other and highlighting differences? Teachers, now is our time of action. We have the information. Now is the time for us to use that information to make informed, educated, research-based decisions for the welfare of our students. Reading books with diverse characters discourages willful blindness and promotes empathy. Having access to these books that represent your culture can help confirm the value of diverse perspectives. And small rural schools in the middle of cornfields need diverse books just as much as their urban counterparts. A book just might be a rural student's only opportunity to see things from a different perspective. Thank you.